They almost did it to me, man. They came in with a question. My man came in with his last minute questions.
Yeah. Got you stuck on the podium.
Man, what's with these last minute questions, man? 20 minutes late to the podcast. Brother, I just got one question.
Yep.
And it's only going to just take you the rest of your life to answer it. Alhamdulillah. We're here. We made it. All right. So what do we got going on today? What do we got for the good people of planet Earth today?
Well, hopefully we're going to cut through the noise, get to the heart of the matter. We're going to try and shake up the digital world here and focus on the rise of the Islamic YouTube preachers, the fake sheikh, the voodoo of the self-help guru, and flesh all this out and see what's really going on. The idea here is that many of us might be bombarded with so much information on social media, and we're getting so much advice, whether that's from one of these thought leaders, or we have people talking about Islam and how you should, not do this or do this. And just as you mentioned, we had one of the brothers being told, hey, what you're doing is wrong, and maybe that's not necessarily true. So we want to kind of, talk about how do we follow someone and take that advice, whether that's in our dunya or in Islam. This becomes important.
I don't know, man. It's kind of nice just to default to haram, man.
It's easier.
It's a lot easier. It makes life easier, man. If you could just default to haram, it simplifies my life as an imam. Now, I don't know about your life,
mine until the end of the day, then on the last day it's not going to be nice.
That makes my life much, much easier if we can just make everything haram.
Right. Well, and what are the real motives for certain people, misleading or having misleading messages, right?
Yes.
And the Islamic YouTuber, the Islamic YouTube preacher, there's many motives and reasoning, and they're pretty much overlapping for the, self-help gurus that we see today. And these are some of the things you want to be wary of, especially as a new person into whatever maybe it might be finance. You have a problem, you need solutions. It might be some Islamic questions, and you're hunting around on YouTube and you come across somebody that walks the walk, talks the talk. But we should be doing our due diligence to verify this. We say this a lot. Well, do your own research. We hear it. We have the acronym for it. Yeah. But are we really doing it? And, again, we get captivated with the speaker. And Allah talks about this, and they will dazzle you with their speech.
Yes.
And mislead you at the end. So, some of the, we'll list out some of these concepts here, but one of the, and I've said this before, one of the North Stars that I use is the Prophet ﷺ's wording of, if they're not doing what I'm doing, don't follow. I think it's more, if you see a man
flying right,
and he's not doing what I'm doing, then don't follow him.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's an amazing statement, because we'd all be dazzled if we saw.
I wonder if that could have any bearing on Boeing. If you see a man flying and he's not following what I'm flying, because Boeing, some of the stuff they've been doing lately. No, I think, it's been described now that we are in a moment of we're drowning in self-help, and we're drowning in a kind of self-help hustle. So that's one aspect to, I made the title of it, Who Can You Trust, right? So when I was trying to think of a title for the podcast, who can you trust? So, people are going and they're looking for solutions to their different issues, whether they're looking for, solutions to your financial issues, to your physical, fitness issues, to your religious, spiritual issues. And so there seems to be no limit to the number of people that are more than willing and able to step up to the plate and offer, solutions to where it creates it's like an extension of the hustle culture. So we have the self-help hustle, and but then also, like what we were talking about yesterday, then there comes, well, how can you come to trust a person that maybe you only know them from being an online personality?
Right.
Are they completely untrustworthy? How does that work? And then is, what measure of responsibility is on us or you, like the person that's on the other, that's watching the screen, to like, do you have to do some of your own footwork, some of your own due diligence to, like, how does it all work? Right. It can be very, because now I think especially post-COVID, that really was kind of a watershed moment that changed how we live. I mean, obviously YouTube and Instagram, all that stuff existed far before COVID. But I think now we have become almost to the point where, well, I'll just watch everything that's online. I mean, most of the imams that I know all say that their attendance post-COVID has gone way down. And that's not because people are staying at home worried to go out. People are just not coming to the masjid for a variety of reasons, and are therefore just sitting back on their couch or in their PJs at home and wanting to just consume everything, via the screen. And that's created like a whole bunch of different challenges. I don't know how healthy that is. But yeah, like, the question was put like, well, how can you trust, or, is there any kind of rubric? Right? How can you rely upon people online? Because we are also now in the moment or the day and age in which you have, it's one thing to be, this is weird, like somebody like myself. I'm on a podcast right now. Hello, people of the internet, right?
You guys should be listening and following us.
Right, exactly. This, like what did Conan's father say at the end of, at the very beginning of that montage in Conan the Barbarian? This you can trust. Right. So I have a podcast. We're doing the podcast. I put my classes online. I stream our khutbah, every Friday. But I also exist as a boots on the ground imam. Like, I'm here at Middle Ground. You can come and find me here. I exist in real life, and I would still say primarily all of this is an extension of the actual lived-in thing. And I have responsibilities. Like, I'm accountable to my community. I'm accountable to you guys. Of course, I'm accountable to Allah Ta'ala. But I'm just saying, like, there's things that help to keep me, grounded, so to speak, to help to keep me accountable because, and that's good for me too. It keeps me grounded. Sure, I'm going to teach my class next Saturday, inshallah, on tafsir and on fiqh. But I'm thinking first and foremost, like, how can that be a benefit to the people that are actually here? So, like, on Saturdays, like, if you're just following me on social media, okay, Imam Marc has his tafsir class and he has his fiqh class. But we actually come for Fajr and pray Fajr, like, in Middle Ground.
Right.
Then we actually have a community breakfast and coffee. So we make food for each other, and we have coffee, and we chop it up, and we get to maintain and build our brotherhood and sisterhood, our friendship, with one another. And so when we get to the class, yeah, okay, alhamdulillah, inshallah, that's an extension of whatever, goes out to the ethernets, right? But yeah, at the same time, like, how could you trust Marc Manley if you didn't live in SoCal and you couldn't come to middle ground? How could you just rely upon this guy?
Right.
This really handsome, bald-headed man. How could you rely upon him to be an authentic and accurate source of Islamic information?
Yeah,
I'll put that to you.
These are the questions that
check is in the
should
mail,
be
too.
posed. Yeah. No, we're going to refer you very well.
Just don't cash it until the first.
Yeah, exactly. He got me again. Yeah. So, these are the questions we should be posing as I pose for myself. Even with my professors, these are just people, man. They might have went through some rigor of study and, have worked within the field, but I still should verify some of this information because they might be coming from a bias of their own concepts, right? Disposition. So, let me do my own due diligence and cross-reference some of this stuff. Can I find this? And for me, first and foremost, I've been studying Islam on my own with other shayukh and cross-referencing. So this becomes a lens or, my own binoculars, Islam, to verify if there's any validity in this maybe psychology class, or whatever it might be. And then there's just some things you don't have to do so much vigorous cross-referencing to double check. But when it comes to social media, when we're getting our news, when there's things that are of the utmost importance, that might be a matter between heaven and hell, well, we better be really verifying our sources. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us to do that in Surah Baqarah. Verify. When you hear the news of the non-Muslims or of the kuffar, verify what you heard. And we would have to even extend that out to Muslims. A Muslim might tell me something. I need to verify that first. Yeah. And we found that even with the Sahaba. Who said that? Omar was very well known to just grab you by the neck and say, how do you know? Who said that?
Yeah.
Say, how did he say it? The Prophet said, let's go ask. I'm going to go ask him.
Right.
And he would go verify that. So some of the ways we could do that, and you mentioned this, in particular with the maybe things you might hear online in regard to Islam. Where's the source? Maybe it was a hadith. Can I go find this hadith if this person said this? Does this person come with any references? Has any other of the imams or sheikh, mashayikh?
Yeah, let's talk about references. Now, what kind of references are there? No, seriously. Like what references could I, as a teacher, as an imam, what references could I give to the public that would at least say, okay, he's not a complete moron, other than just being able to be loquacious and talk well. And,
you dazzle me.
Because that's all you seem to need today is if hey,
rap, bro.
Exactly. He's got bars. That's it.
Say, bars. He's a Mac. So, well, you had mentioned you would come with other grounded or well-known imams of the area. So they would vouch for you. I'm sure you were vouched for.
I was. So when I was, so even before I came to California, right, I was approached, so a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I just used to work in information technology as a web developer. And so I worked in IT, and I worked at the University of Pennsylvania. And so I used to go on, because, for Jumu'ah, I would just go and pray on campus, where the students were at. And so long story short, one day I was asked to give a khutbah. Now, I had been what you would maybe call like a talib al-ilm or student of knowledge for many years, but the idea of like giving a khutbah is like, are you out of your mind? No, dude, I just study. I was, very diligent in my studies, but it was all just for my own personal development. So anyway, a friend of mine, Adnan, asked me to replace him because he had to travel. He was doing his PhD at the time at Penn. So I gave a khutbah. People liked the khutbah. And so next thing I know, they went before the university and were like, hey, like, you know, we would like to have a Muslim chaplain. This is the candidate that we think you guys should look at. So the community put me forward as the Muslim chaplain. Now, at the time, like, I was attending, like, Sheikh Anwar Muhammad and his brother Anas, may Allah Ta'ala bless both of them and have mercy on their father, in Philly with Quba Masjid. And so after getting to know me over many years, they eventually invited me to come and teach a couple of classes at the masjid. So I say all this, like, I never put myself forward. I wasn't like, okay, I'm here now. I've studied these books, and now I'm here to answer everybody's questions. Right. So it was never in my mind to ever become an imam or even a khatib, whatever. I was like, I'm just a Muslim, a seriously committed Muslim who really loves to study Islam, but never in 1,000 years. So when it came time to suddenly now be kind of thrust into this, I was able to say, well, look, my teacher is the one, the teacher I was studying with, he pushed me to do this. Mm-hmm. Or they're signing off. And so fast forward, eventually, like, I kind of, I remember, like, Imam Suhaib Webb invited me when he was Imam in Boston and had this winter retreat thing that he had. And so I came to that and I gave a talk. And then I worked with some brothers from Maryland area that used to put on this conference called the Pearls of the Quran, Brother Mu'tasim Atiyah and his brothers and his family and those guys. So anyway, long story short, when communities then started to reach out to me and say, hey, like, are you interested in taking an imam position? Because I was not the kind of person that said, okay, well, like, I graduated from Azhar, or I graduated from Qura, or I graduated from Jamiat al-Madina, or Qarawiyyin in Morocco or something. I didn't have those. I sat with mashayikh for years in Detroit. I did a little bit of studying abroad, but, certainly not your traditional seminary student. And so when I was asked to start doing, to potentially take an imam position, I basically had to lean upon my teachers to write me letters of recommendation. Yeah. So by the time I show up in Southern California at the Rancho Masjid, right, like, I remember, like, Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Amri from Qura, Dr. Sherman Jackson, I think even Imam Suhaib Webb, and, a few other, like, Sheikh Anwar Muhammad, several other mashayikh that I had studied with were like, yes, we give our, whatever recommendation for him to work as imam, and on and on and on. And I can still draw upon those because, I'm a little bit of a different figure where, one, like, I have an Anglo name, my name is Marc Manley. I don't have a, Arab sounding Muslimish name. So, it can be a little bit off-putting to say, oh, Imam Marc. Well, what is that?
What's your Muslim name?
Yeah, exactly. And I went through that. I think, like, my first day at the job at the Rancho Masjid, this guy flipped out because my name was Marc, even though we had this, like, 20-minute conversation in Arabic, and he thought I was Arab. But then when he found out that I wasn't, like, he went and complained to the board. So anyway, how does that work? Well, one, like, I think look for people, because I don't want to make this about me. It's not about me. Right. Look for people that have a track record in the community. So if you go and do like a sort of breadcrumb trail on myself, again, just using myself as an example, I started teaching in the Muslim community back in the early 90s at the Islamic Center in Ann Arbor and in a few other places, like I think the Islamic Center in Canton, where one of my teachers, Sheikh Ali, was at. I started teaching, like, at the Sunday school. Mm. So I was a known quantity in a known community, and so I had a presence, and I was, like, teaching Arabic on a Sunday school program or something. So look for somebody that has, like, an actual track record of being in a community, being involved in that community, and then what is their, have they taught? Because it's one thing to read some books and to know some talking points, but are you trained in pedagogy? I think this is a big problem in our community, even for those students that legitimately go and study at Azhar or al-Qura or an Islamic university.
Right.
They will go and study the various Islamic sciences. Alhamdulillah, they learn them. That does not mean that person is trained how to teach that stuff to other people.
Right.
Right? So look for people that have a track record in a community, people that can demonstrate that they have some pedagogy. Like I get asked all the time, like, where did you learn to give khutbah? Because you seem to be very good at public speaking. And I was like, well, actually, I got trained how to give a khutbah at NPR.
Yeah.
Because I used to work in radio. And I had a radio show for NPR for several years when I was living in Michigan.
Right.
And that's where I learned to develop how to speak publicly. And then when I was at Penn, I got a job teaching web design, a certificate program at Moore College. It was a private art school. And so my job, and then eventually I moved from just only doing like front-end web design then to instructional technology. So I had professional credentials that I know how to teach. Yes, it is important to make sure that people are getting the authentic, Islamic information. That is true. But you also want to make sure that people know what to do with that authentic Islamic information.
Sure.
Right. So I think that looking for people that have professional credentials, because a lot of times we just assume, if so-and-so memorized the Quran or they, attended a university, well, that's a one-stop shop. They're good for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in conjunction with that, I think, in the inverse, when you're kind of looking at an instructor, a mentor, a self-help instructor or coach, or if you're taking your knowledge from someone online in regards to Islam, one of the red flags might be the financial gain aspect of it. While there's nothing wrong with that,
right.
Is that the overbearing message they keep, putting out there? The other idea, is it all about the fame and influence? So are they desiring personal recognition? And, that might be obfuscated, could be very obvious.
Right.
But those are, again, some of the things, you start to line up some of these ideas, and if they're all falling in a row, it's like, okay, well, hold on here, because you might have been captivated with the speech, but one big giveaway is they're always critiquing other people. There's a critique of all these other great, actually well-established people in particular sectors and fields, and especially in Islam.
Yes.
And there's a critique all of a sudden about these, imams I've followed, right? And it's like,
yes.
Hey,
that's a great point. Look for people that also build. Now, this is where I would say the stronger onus or the heavier part. This is what is definitely upon the follower than upon the personality. Is that I or anybody can come on YouTube, Instagram, and start deconstructing, criticizing anything or anybody, personalities, schools of thoughts, movements. I can do all that. What am I building? What am I constructing? And that, to me, should be the first red flag. If that person is only trafficking and transacting in destruction, deconstruction, criticism, that's a red flag for somebody that
who not to follow.
Probably not the best idea to follow. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a place in teaching for deconstruction or criticism, but if that's all you do, or everything that you do is ensconced in just bashing and criticizing,
controversy,
then that's also the sign of a very immature mind. And especially when it comes to anything related to our worship and our of Allah Ta'ala, of our worship of God, of our wanting to be like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to follow him, that is not in line with that. So be very suspicious of people that are just like clickbait.
Yeah.
Very, very, everything is just clickbait and just tearing down, mean-spirited, or even just dour, maybe, have a very sour outlook on things. Now, again, I think there's a place for deconstruction and criticism and whatnot. But at the end, what are you trying to build? If that person isn't building anything, that's a red flag, man.
Yeah. Well, and again, like I said, so when you're filtering things through your Islamic studies as students of knowledge, we would first be a red flag for me, because unity is far. So why is this individual, breaking up the ummah by putting down or exposing some of the religious leaders? Likewise, that's another thing we should be doing, is covering the faults of our brothers and sisters. So why is this being aired so publicly? So something's wrong there. But it's the lack of knowledge where we wouldn't even be able to identify, hey, this is going against the verse, this is going against the sunnah. What's going on with this brother here?
And then sometimes also, let's be honest, are those people tearing them? Like I'll even though I think certainly I am neither a fanboy of, nor am I opposed to Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, right? Who I think now has become this kind of like pariah figure that people, love to hate. But so he's an easy target, all right? Oh, Hamza Yusuf said this, and Hamza Yusuf said that. And yes, there are definitely some things that I've heard him say that I don't agree with. But to just absolutely tear down somebody that has undoubtedly dedicated a lot of their life to serving the community, that has unquestionably done a lot of good, that is responsible for a lot of people coming into the religion. I'm not saying that should then give a person a blank check or put them beyond the pale of critique. But sometimes I also feel like, that's the low-hanging fruit. Like the way to pull yourself up is to then try to tear somebody down.
Right.
I think also it's hard. You take somebody like a Hamza Yusuf, like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, who's been in the game, so to speak, a very long time. It's hard to bat 1,000 for forever. It's very, very hard. Now, I'm not saying that there may be also, it's sometimes there's who was I listening to? I was listening to this interview of, what's his name? Rick Beato. He's this very famous YouTuber. He's a musician that interviews like really popular musicians. And so he was talking to Sting and to Stewart. Oh, actually, he talked to Sting, Stewart Copeland, and Andy Summers. So the Police, like the three guys that made up the band of the Police. And he was saying to them, like, what's really remarkable about the Police as a band is that you guys went out while you were on top. You didn't wait to break up the band after you like put out a bunch of albums that bombed and you all became drug addicts and you hit rock bottom, then you broke up. He's like, you guys broke up while you were on top. You were like one of the greatest bands in the world, super popular. Critics loved you, fans loved you, and then you broke up the band. And he said that had to take like a certain kind of, in some ways like humility and self-awareness to know like we've hit a high water mark. Everybody kind of has a shelf life. And there's, and like none of them left music. They all went off and did their own various things, but they let that thing. I think that's the hard part, especially as a big public figure. If you're a big public figure, it's hard to be a big public figure over a long haul and remain loved and popular. One, you will probably find that maybe the audience that you first resonated with, as you've grown, they've grown, and maybe you've grown in different directions.
Sure.
And then also probably you're not going to relate to now that other generation coming up. You just might not resonate, with them. And so perhaps there's some other things for you to go off and do. But if you try to remain in that spot, then you kind of invite disaster because I think everybody sort of has a shelf life, as it relates to being this big, popular figure.
Sure.
But I also feel like people just love to hate a winner. Now you can critique Sheikh Hamza on a great many things, and I have, especially some things that he said in the more modern time. But again, they are criticisms that are within the boundaries of he's my brother in Islam, and I love him for the sake of Allah, and I want good for him in this life and his family in this life and the next. I do not despise my brother.
Right.
I also cheer and laud all of his accomplishments. I mean, the man built a university. Now, you can critique the university, whether it's a good one, a bad one. Could it be better? Could they do something that, sure, fine, go ahead and do that. But you cannot critique that the man built a university, a Muslim university.
Right.
That's an extraordinary achievement. And so I also feel like people are not fair-minded when it comes to criticism, that they can be very, very just mean-spirited.
Well, and that's the point you had made, is most people who are doing that have a lot of time on their hands and they haven't built anything, so it's easier just to be able to.
It's one thing to say, well, I think his university. Okay, yeah, me too. I'm sure I could sit around for days and think about what the university could be or could not be, but at the same time, you know what? Nobody's trusted me with millions of dollars,
right,
to do that.
Right.
So, I think that. That being said, though, if I don't like that term, devil's advocate, but let's just take it another way. One of my criticisms that I did make against Sheikh Hamza, that I feel that has made him not as the most reliable person to take religion from directly in the modern context, is that he has given into this sort of like tangentialism. Like when he talks now, it's just like all over the place. And I see this with a lot of speakers now. When, they'll be giving, I saw this YouTube video where he was supposed to be talking about the Ihya Ulumuddin or something like that. And it was like, I forget how many, like, multi-hour long sessions. And every session would start off, and then he would just, like, go off on these tangents. And it's like, no, teach, focus, teach. So that's what I mean. Also from a qualitative point of view, if you're going to take from people, make sure you're taking from people that are actually teaching you. If somebody's teaching you the Ihya, and they're not talking about the Ihya, they're just rambling or they're being tangential, then that's not teaching, and therefore that's not learning. And that's where, again, I put, there's as much upon that individual as it upon the audience to not accept that. So I don't want to make this about bashing individuals, and I don't want to give, I don't want to make it only about Sheikh Hamza, because it's not only about him. And again, this is a person that I have a lot of love and respect for. I greatly benefited when I was a new Muslim. I think Sheikh Hamza made learning Islam cool.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think if that's anything that he made really wanting to sit down and study the tradition of Islam, he made it cool. Now, whether you actually got to doing that, now that could be the critique and the other question, but nonetheless, he gave, like, that was what Zaytuna made it like, man, like, it's cool to study the religion.
Yep.
That's a wonderful thing. Obviously, for a nerd like me, like, that really resonates.
I used to get. I was fortunate. I was going to start kicking you in your leg and your shin, but I can't reach you over there because that was one of my shaykh.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to sit in his, sessions. I would make the trek up there because that's what we did as students of knowledge, to go sit with the people, right? And I was fortunate living in San Jose. Hayward wasn't too far away, I would go make that trek. I sat with Zaid. Shocker, and I mean, it was, like you said, it was cool. It was cool.
They made learning. I remember when I was in Philly. This is before Zaytuna actually went to Berkeley. This is back when they were in Hayward, and they were just, and so when they were looking for a new home, they were going to expand to what ultimately became the campus on Berkeley. I remember I was in Philly, and Sheikh Hamza came to town because they were looking and they were trying to figure out where they were not 100% sure they were even going to stay in California.
Right.
So they had heard of the Muhammad brothers, Sheikh Anas and Sheikh Anwar. So they came to Philly and sat with Sheikh Anwar and Sheikh Anas, and I was included in this little luncheon because I'm like, why am I with? I'm thinking like, man, like I'm sitting with the big dogs now. Why do they want me? I'm nobody. I'm just some knucklehead, right? And so Sheikh Anwar invited me to attend the session, and I remember when they did this like weekend intensive thing, and so my other little hobby that I had was photography. So I had started to get hired by different orgs in the Muslim community doing event photography. So Zaytuna hired me to also shoot this event. So anyway, I wound up having lunch with like Sheikh Hamza, and I met him, and I'm thinking like, wow, like my mind is blown. I'm so excited to meet him, even though we had an odd sort of encounter. And then when they had the event, it was great. Like it was just like they just gave this, wherever they went, they gave this air of scholarship and wanting to deeply learn your Islam. And I for me, I will be forever grateful for having that experience. And that's what I don't feel today.
No.
With with all of this influencer stuff and people, I feel like people have walked away from wanting to really study, and they want to have everything convenient, And what's crazy, if you go on YouTube now, is everything is there. I mean, there's like almost limitless knowledge or information that's been recorded and put up there, and yet people still don't seem to know anything. People seem to know less today about Islam than they did 30 years ago.
And so, again, some of these, we had talked about qualifiers that might help out new Muslims or just people in general, is and we're going to overlap some of these criteria, but you might have over-the-top claims. You might have the lack of credential, right? So there might not be any type of experiential knowledge or traditional or whatever book knowledge. It doesn't matter. Just a lack of credentials and any people to refer them. Excessive focus on wealth. So we talked about there's a particular individual right now where, he's kind of in the North African area right now, but gaining momentum because he has the money, but his promoting, like he has this particular thobe that has patches on it, and my wife pointed this out to me, and she goes, and he's selling this thobe. So you're trying to be, this kind of living the minimalist lifestyle as a Muslim, yet the thobe is like, a pretty exorbitant amount of money. Man,
some of this minimalist ain't minimal in price tag, man.
And he's Zahid or something, and then, he'll charge you too to bless the thobe. So you can get a blessing on the thobe, but you're going to have to pay for it.
Oh, I like this, man. I like this.
Yes. Man. This is a good... So it blew my mind. I said, what? So excessive focus on wealth, and it's so covert because you're captivated with the speech. You're with it. Yeah, my thobe was blessed by Sheikh Fulan. Subhanallah. All right, and so we get captivated with it. And my dhikr, he kissed my dhikr beads, so now subhanallah. Like, so these are the things that, if we're not careful with, and maybe our audience are like, what? We would never get trapped like that. But we get trapped in other things that threw us off guard. We weren't focusing on. So think about that. Overemphasis on personal branding, lack of transparency, vague and generic advice. So they keep, the guru is good at that. He keeps leading you on and leading you on, and man, I spent 20 minutes.
That's the self-help hustle is the vague and generic advice. And I think I had said yesterday, like in my estimation, like I feel like our community has been trapped in Islam 101 And a lot of Muslims have been trapped in Islam 101 for maybe most of their lives, and they never graduate beyond knowing the basics. And it's, okay, it's fine. It's one thing to be humble and say, like, I don't really know anything. And certainly when I look at myself and compare myself, not only just to other people today, but obviously of the scholars of the past, I'm like, yeah, I pretty much don't know anything at all. That being said, though, alhamdulillah, like I've been blessed to be occupied with learning the Quran. And that was something I was, from a modern scholar, Sheikh Musa'id at-Tayyar, hafidhahullah, may Allah bless him, is a scholar from Saudi Arabia that is one of the preeminent scholars, contemporary scholars, like of tafsir. And so he has many great books and, tons of great lectures on the field of tafsir. And so he did a commentary on the introduction to Ibn Juzay's tafsir, which is the one that I teach every Saturday, predominantly from Ibn Juzay's tafsir, right? At-Tasheel li-Ulum at-Tanzil. So Sheikh at-Tayyar, he does a commentary on Ibn Juzay's intro. And he said something really, really beautiful. Let's see if I can bring up... Yeah, that's the other one. So this one, he talks about how he was blessed by Allah. Like he said, the way for him to ascertain, like how was he blessed by Allah. This is Ibn Juzay talking, and then Sheikh At-Tayyar, who is commenting on it. And he said that Allah Ta'ala has kept me busy. That Allah kept me busy in the khidmah of the Quran. He kept me busy in the service of the Quran. And then Ibn Juzay goes on to talk about, there he said, في أنواع كثير في خدمة القرآن. There's many different types of ways to be of service to the Quran. And he said, مثلا واحد بإقراء القرآن. Some scholars, all they do is أن يصحح الطلاب في قراءتهم. All that they do is they teach recitation, and they will correct the students so that they have nice recitation. And he will شغل بذلك كل عيشه. He will be busy with that his whole entire life. And he said, and that if you either أردت أنه شغل غير ذلك, and if you were to ask him to do something other than that, he said ما استطاع. He would not be able to do so. Then there were others that they were, he said, شغل في الاستنباط. Right, those of deriving rulings from the Quran. وَفِي تَفْسِيرِ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. And others were busy. But he said the main thing is that what? Your teacher is a person that should be busy with the Quran. If you are watching somebody online and all they're doing is tearing somebody down, all they're doing is trafficking in negativity, if your own knowledge of the Quran is not increasing, but all you know is, this person is a deviant, and this person is this and that, and this person did this. Now you've just basically got TMZ. You've got TMZ Islamic knowledge, right? Then that's also a sign that this is not a person. Not only is this not a person to follow, but you have some bad qualities and have developed some bad tastes. What the ulama call radha'il. You have lowly tastes that you like listening to people bash and trash others. There's something wrong with you. So, the sign of how is a person trustworthy? Are they busy with the Quran? Now, you might say, well, like, why are you always posting these pictures of books? You're just trying to show off. No, I'm not trying to show off. Trust me, if I wanted to show off, I would just show you my cooking, because that's where I could really show off, right? If I really wanted to do some riyah, I would do riyah in the kitchen.
Shakes with steaks.
Right, yeah, shakes and steaks, right? If I really wanted to show off, I'd be showing off in the kitchen, right? No, I do this because I'm always busy reading. And I'm always telling people, read. You got to read. You got to read the Quran for yourself. You've got to read books. You've got to develop the habit of being a student, of being a reader. And I don't care whether you like to read or not. You got to get over the hump of whether I like to or not. And so a big part of what I try to convey through my teaching is also to hopefully convey to you the importance of a love of studying.
Right.
A love of studying.
Yeah.
I mean, who was it? I think it was Ibn al-Jawzi, and I wrote this the other day on my Twitter. See, look at me. Here I am. I'm always online, getting it, wasting my time.
That's where you reach the people. I mean, that's where they're at.
But, it was a really beautiful quote. And he said that, oh my gosh, I can't even read. I got to read this on my phone, man. This is where man, you're getting old, man. I need my readers. I can't, my God, and I probably have trouble reading this on here without my readers. I think I need my my reading glasses. He said, وَإِنِّي أُخْبِرُ عَنْ حَالِي. This is Ibn al-Jawzi, one of the great scholars of Islam. He said, let me tell you a little bit something, right, about who I am. He says, hali, like my state. But, okay, like what kind of person am I? He said, مَا أَشْبِعُ مِنْ مُطَاعَةِ الْكُتُبِ. He said, I can never be satisfied, right, with the reading of books, meaning like I can never be satiated. I love them. He said, إِذَا أَرَدْتَ كِتَابًا لَمْ أَرَهُ. When I read a book or I discover a book that I've never seen before, he said, كَأَنِّي وَقَدْتُ عَلَى كَنْزٍ. It's as if I've discovered a lost treasure.
Yeah.
So look for teachers that inspire you in your habits. Okay, maybe you don't read a lot, and maybe reading is a struggle. Maybe reading for you is like NyQuil. I know some people, they read a paragraph and man, it's like they fall asleep. That's fine, as long as you at least get a paragraph.
Yeah. And
that like I need to read and I need to study. So looking for teachers that also convey to you and exhibit those qualities.
Yeah.
And not just going for low-hanging fruit of bashing and trashing other people.
Exactly. Yeah, so questionable religious knowledge, controversial statements. So, the problem here is for some of the new Muslims or the laymen, we'll come across some more sophisticated, more learned
right.
Fake sheikh. So this also becomes, a tragedy because you think you're following the right path. I mean, it's almost like the munafiq. It is the worst disaster ever, the munafiq, right? Because they're coming in as though they are here to help you, right? And they lead you right to destruction.
Also, the part about the munafiq is that they are not consistent. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا فَطُبِعَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ. Allah says what? The reason why they block people from the path of Allah and they try to deceive people, because actually at one point in time, they used to believe. Then they turned their back on belief, and as a result, Allah sealed their hearts. And now they don't understand anything.
Yes. So inconsistent in the teachings.
Yes.
That's one of the other red flags you'll pick up on. So if you stay with them long enough and your mind is open and you made dua, oh Allah, give me knowledge that benefits, that's the key here. Two things too we'll point out is one, the dua. Asking Allah for knowledge that benefits, as the Prophet ﷺ has made this dua. Also, the Prophet ﷺ reminds us when something is agitating the heart, that's the first sign.
Right.
This isn't good for me.
Yeah.
Whether that's halal or haram, something haram in particular, but in this case too. So, istikhara, this is important. Asking Allah to, getting Allah involved with whatever actions you're taking, especially when you're going to start really seeking knowledge. I mean, if you're just passively, flipping through YouTube channels,
That's not, thing, I mean, I think that's the other thing is that I teach here at Middle Ground. And my teaching is at middle ground. And I think, and you actually probably have a lot more credentials in this area. I mean, you studied pedagogy,
Yes.
And there's real challenges to teaching online. So like just in the last few weeks, I've tried to make a change where now, like particularly in the fiqh class, like I've added like a little testing component.
Yeah.
No, this is not like real heavy, but still, I was like, how can I think of some ways, even if you are only going to be watching my fiqh class like online, and I was thinking of this from the perspective of, okay, let's say you're somewhere and there's no classes where you're at, and okay, fine, you're going to be following my class, and now I've had like we're on session 18 now, so we've had 18 classes in our Maliki fiqh class, right? Well, if there's no testing, right, if you just attend 18 lectures and it's just listen to me talk, and you were just sitting there watching, then how can I actually, as a teacher, legitimately as a teacher, have any confidence or right to claim the mantle of teacher if I'm not ensuring that you're learning anything?
Right.
How can I, and so online learning is a real challenge. So I was like, all right, the very least I can do is create a little quiz so that you can take that after the class session every time. That's the very least. And I still feel deficient in that.
Sure.
I still want to work towards more having rigor, because I want us to move beyond just listening to people talk, listening to lectures.
Right.
I want there to be some rigor and some learning, and you should want that too, as the person on the other end of the screen, right?
Yeah.
My point being, if your teacher isn't doing those things, then I'm not saying they're horrible, because I didn't do it for a long time either. It's just, if there's no progression of like, okay, we've done that for a while, how can I make it better? Okay, let's add a little testing component. I mean, you should want to really learn. Or are you really just looking for like Islamo entertainment? No, I'm serious, because,
happening.
And I'm not saying that you can't, I'm not saying every single lecture that you listen to has to be, at the end of it, you have to write an essay and take 50 multiple choice questions. I'm not saying that. But we do need to move towards ensuring that there is some actual learning going on. Because as long as we have that low standard, this will invite these self-help gurus to come in and charge you $100 to bless their thobe. I mean, this guy sounds like there's this book written by Robert Jordan, or a series of fantasy sci-fi novels written by Robert Jordan, who did the series called The Wheel of Time. And there was a character in it who was like a bard, like he was like a minstrel, right? And he wore this patchwork cloak that he was called a gleeman. And so when I saw this, I'm like, yo, this is like Tom Maryland from Wheel of Time, from Robert Jordan. What is this? This is crazy.
Yeah. So these are some of the pitfalls that maybe many people will. Okay, so people in this particular time too, where we're economically challenged, maybe mentally challenged. There's issues going on in our families. We're depressed. We have so many many Americans right now, Muslim, non-Muslim, are having issues. The youth, and can't find a job, whatever it might be. And we start gravitating towards these personalities, right, and latch on.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things you also want to be aware of. And if, as our Imam mentioned, if they're not promoting healthy concepts, and it's hard to determine that, but like we've been giving you a list here, you might want to back up off of that. You don't have to be there. That's the beauty of it. You could just click out. It's not like
that's what I'm saying. There is a level of culpability that you as the watcher has.
Yeah.
And I think if anything that comes out of this talk, if you were to take anything away, is just be not just simply more discerning of who you are going to select, obviously that, but also just the fact that you need to be discerning.
Yes.
And just because somebody comes and says, well, I have ijaza in this and ijaza in that, right? I have a license. again, that doesn't prove. I mean, I can tell you as somebody that studied briefly, overseas, and that I remember attending, lectures of which you could just show up. The scholar would be reading from, I don't know, a particular text or portion of a text or poem or whatever that it was. And at the end of it, all you had to do is sit there, listen to beginning to end, and go up, and then you would get your little ijazah.
Yeah, I got one.
What does that mean? That means nothing. And here's the thing, I'm not belittling, I'm not like some sort of like neo-traditionalist or post-traditionalist that is mocking the tradition of Islam of getting licenses. But as I said before, the word, it's almost very postmodern, like what we talked about in the last podcast topic, right? So when something is postmodern and we're dealing with these simulations and these simulacra, right, of no longer referencing original material and now we're just making stuff up. I feel that's like what we have now with the ijazah. It's become a buzzword that has connotation and no denotation whatsoever, right? It sounds great. I have ijazah in this. Yeah. What does that actually mean? Right? Did you actually learn it?
Right.
Are you competent in it? There's no way to know, because in the old school system, if you go back to when ijazah was an actual living reality and not a buzzword, it meant many different things. One of them is it meant that you were a person that went through a much more protracted system of learning, not being able to just show up to a lecture, listen to it for an hour, and then get a little sheet of paper that says you have a license to teach it, even though that teacher has no way of knowing whether or not you know a damn thing about the topic or not, right? So that is, that's one issue. Two, or to go back to finish my thought, is that you went through a more protracted study. So that meant you sat for years studying Arabic grammar, Arabic morphology, Arabic, rhetoric in the Arabic language. You studied rudimentary texts in theology or creed, aqidah. You studied elementary texts in fiqh and da-da-da-da-da. So that eventually you got to a point that your teacher with confidence could then give you a license to say, okay, you've gone through an actual curriculum. You've gone through an actual manhaj, right? That's the meaning of, right? Is you've gone through an actual curriculum of which now there can be some legitimate confidence bestowed upon you to be able to confidently go out and teach this thing and you know what you're talking about.
Right.
That is not what ijazah is today. Now, of course, ijazah was also related to like ilm al-hadith, like the field of hadith, knowledge of hadith about statements of the Prophet ﷺ, of being able to ascertain whether or not the riwayah or the narration, the transmission of the thing actually goes back to the Prophet or not, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so on. So when we say the word ijazah today, I don't want to say it's meaningless, but it does not mean what we think it means.
Exactly.
It's like that line from The Princess Bride. Did you ever see that old movie, The Princess Bride, right? Where it's like the guy keeps going, inconceivable.
Yeah.
Right? And the guy's character is like, I don't think you know what it means, right? Ijazah. I don't think you know what ijazah means.
Right. Yeah, well, that's my gold chain, bro.
I've even had people ask me, like when I first started, when I first announced that we were going to do the Maliki fiqh class.
Oh, really? They say.
I had some people that I had never seen before contact me. Are you going to be giving ijazah for this course? No. Never heard from him again. Imam Suhaib can also attest to this. Students coming to him all the time. Yeah. Will you give me ijazah? For what?
So I can go on YouTube and
yeah, exactly. What? So you can go around and tell people that you know? No, absolutely not. So, be wary of people that say, oh, they have ijazah, they have ijazah. Exactly. I mean, yes. I mean, I think I mentioned once, like, I went through, and because that's because I sat under him and studied with him, and then he gave me the okay. He greenlit me to actually give a khutbah. So I talked about, that. But I just feel like the way that the word ijazah is commonly talked about and thrown about and bantered about, that it's just,
Yeah.
It is a far cry of the historical origins of that word.
Right. No, it's true. Like I said, I have one. I forgot all the isnad, believe me. So, but the sheikh told us, listen, you guys, don't run around. But you did sit with me, and for the sake of traditional knowledge of how we do this is what we would do.
My teachers were like, no, you sat with me, and if you ever want to put my name in your mouth, number one, you better make sure that and two, if it gets back to me and I found out you did something bad, right? So that's what I mean about, following people that have some level of accountability.
Exactly.
So I don't know, man. I feel like we could talk about this one, man, for hours, but our community, man, is we're in a precarious position. We are really in a kind of precarious position. We need to seriously start to think about, we need to think about how we're going to go forward and build. It's fine to deconstruct. That's what I said last week about all the postmodernists, right? It's fine to go and deconstruct, and many of their observations are all basically deconstruction. Many of their observations are quite astute, but their conclusions are straight kufr, heresy, straight misguidance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Man, I might need to get the same security Trump had on this one. I might have to duck.
Get stalkers on you.
If you see me with a little tea bag on my ear next week.
Or a black eye. You're not the, what do they call it, the black eye.
You know what's up, man. Alhamdulillah.